Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We are live streaming. If I could ask you to just please take out your phone and turn it off. I really appreciate that. Also, other logistics, if anybody needs to leave early, we have a back door. That means if you just keep going down that hall, you will get to the back door. Good morning. So, it seems profound, but some kids just need to learn how to learn. You're here today to get some really great insight into what that means and why we do what we do. Because school is not always about how much I know, how much intellect I have. Often it's also about how well I do it or how well I don't do it. If we look at what that how well I do it means, it really comes down to executive function. And executive function are mental processes in the prefrontal cortex. I hate these things. In the prefrontal cortex, the last part of your brain to develop, but the part of the brain that is absolutely essential for our more advanced classes, for our honors classes, for classes that really expect us to keep track of all of our materials, all of our organization, and be able to analyze and use the material in very profoundly advanced ways. So the time management, the planning, the prioritization, the initiation, learning from your mistakes, self-advocacy, all of these fall into executive function. And what we do know is that executive function is about process. And often the process intersects in a negative way with the content when we're looking at what is occurring in school. Your child might be able to tell me everything about a time period in history. In fact, it might be something that they consider one of their favorite areas to research. Yet on the test, they might do poorly because they read the directions wrong, or they forgot to fill out the study guide that was going to count as part of it because they looked at the study guide and knew everything on it. So they didn't realize that they were going to be great enough. They missed that direction. Or they actually did it, but forgot to bring it to school. Those are the process pieces that Lindsay's going to talk about today and that we work with every day. So what we know is executive function, as I said, is housed in the prefrontal cortex. It's the last part of the brain to develop. The brain develops from the brainstem forward, and this is the part of the brain that is farthest forward. We also know that it's the part of the brain that helps us set goals and helps us understand the importance of certain areas that often as children we don't see as important. Somebody else will tell me when it's time to really go, I don't understand what that 5 or 10 minutes means. We have to know the path to the goal. Just saying there's a test on Thursday doesn't help a child with executive dysfunction because there's always goals within that goal. When somebody says there's a test on Thursday, I have to know how to initiate. I have to know how to organize my materials. I have to know how to time manage my study. I have to know how to actively study so that I gain working memory. There are so many aspects that I have to know. And if something derails, often everything derails. The tools are what will help me facilitate that. And Lindsay's going to go into tons and tons of tools. And then how to adjust. So executive functions are processes that begin to start developing at birth. If we look at this, this was actually a longitudinal study at UCLA. And if we look at the blue, at 5 years old, there's a bit of blue. As we get older, there's quite a bit of blue. This is a 20-year-old brain of a female. It's showing her complete adult executive functions. Women have that full development around 20. Men have the full development around 28. If you have ADHD, subtract 7 years approximately. If you have anxiety, depending on where that lands, it can be all over the place. So our executive functions are highly affected by other conditions that we might be experiencing. As I said before, executive functions are that organization, time management piece. And what that equates to is how do I actually do the preparation and the process of school. So if I can't inhibit, I might not think about planning and prioritizing. I might not shift. I just took a break and I really like what I'm doing and I don't think about going back to work because I can't inhibit what I'm doing right now. I might not complete the task because I went off track and never came back. I might not have the emotional control to do what I need to have it be the paper, the project, the homework assignment that I initially thought it was going to be. It's not necessarily that I intentionally set out to fail. In fact, I consider lazy a four-letter word. These children aren't lazy. They're probably pedaling faster than any of us would ever hope to pedal. They're just doing it incredibly and efficiently. They don't know how to change. They would love to change. They don't like feeling like this.
All right. Hi, everyone. Everyone there, too? I think she said, introduce yourself, but this is Kathy Essig, who's my business partner. I am Debbie Rosen, we're the founders of StudyPro, and I want to ask, how many people are here for the very first time today? Yeah, well, welcome. This is our homework center that you're sitting in. Usually not this crowded. We'd love so many people to be here doing their homework together. But normally what happens is that a lot of the tables aren't here, and so we actually have a course that we teach that's executive function, study skills, time management. Many of your parents of graduates of that course. We like to make sure that what we teach in the course is really what students actually learn to do. And as we all know, many times we need to put supports at the point of performance. And so when kids come home from school and they have to do all their homework, and what happens is they're really struggling. A lot of it is that executive function that Kathy was talking about, that inhibition or that the emotional control, because it's really hard after a long day of every single thing we've done to come home and think you have to start a huge project and do a lot of reading, right? We go to work every day, and I know I come home from work sometimes and I'm not really in the mood to just start 4 hours more of homework. So part of what we try to do is reduce the anxiety for the students by making it a little bit easier to initiate, because you're walking in the door, you have a coach, you get the help. This is less about selling what we do and more about saying, part of it, what we as parents, we want to communicate so much to parents, and Lindsay's going to communicate, I think in so many ways, is that we just want to do as much as we can to remove the barriers. Having the right environment, right? Having the right kind of help. Helping to soothe the nervous system of our students. I watched an incredible video the other day, which is, how do we get less resistance from our kids when we try to help? How many get resistance from their kids when we try to help? I do too. And what he really said was that if the nervous system of our kid is fight or flight, I don't feel safe with you trying to help me. Now, why is that? I have great executive function. I know how to do this, right? How many times have we said that? Why can't they just listen to me? And part of it is because what they're hearing from us is judgment. What they're feeling themselves are fear. So I'm fearful I can't do it. I'm fearful it's going to be really hard. And now you're seeming so anxious for me to get it going. So I'm just going to put this big wall up. But the point that really is important is that all of this is very natural. And as kind of a backdrop to what Lindsay is going to be talking about, one of the things that I think is really important for us to understand is that doing homework is not that simple, right? Because one of the first things we have to do is know that we have homework. We have to write it down, make the assignment. Then we have to have all of our materials. And all of the materials we have to have with us, right? And then we have to be able to take them out and read the directions and know exactly what to do. Sometimes, we'll find, and Lindsay will talk a little bit more about this, that, kids are coming home and doing their vocabulary cards, but are they really understanding what they're putting down? I was noticing with my own daughter that when she was trying to understand vocabulary, she was actually trying to memorize the words the way we would memorize a phone number. Now try to recall 20 phone numbers on a test. It's very difficult. But I understand the context of the word first, that might be a better way. So it's not necessarily when we say to our kids, do their homework, right? We want that get their homework done, but then we find out later it's not done exactly like we think it would, or they're not doing as well on the test. Sometimes it's really important. Another thing that Lindsay will talk about is really that error analysis. Why are the errors happening? And in this case, it was because she took the word sobriety and it was commitment to not drinking, for example, simplified direction. And simplified definition. But the only thing she remembered is that first part of the phone number, commitment. So she thought sobriety is commitment. Oh no, and she's like, yeah, Mom, it's, don't drive sober, you'll be pulled over. And like, no, it's drive, no, it isn't. It's, she's mad at me. I'm like, yes, no, stop. So we have to provide context. So what do we do? Instead of trying to have, the first thing she does is just learn the definition. It's the first thing that she would do is try to, thank you to a site Lindsay found, try to find sentences to use it in context so she can really understand the context first. If I understand that by looking at a picture, this is the table, it's a lot easier than trying to describe what a table is if you're trying to learn the definition. So the point we're really trying to make is that when we tell our kids to do their homework or they're being told to do their homework, there's a lot that has to happen. And so if something falls off, what happens to the goal? Right? Any of these things that can fall off, the goal just goes away. And so the next thing we really want to talk about is that a lot of these challenges that come as a result of things Kathy were talking about, problem starting, poor time management, forgetfulness, our kids develop asynchronously. And what does that mean? That maybe my ability to manage that math content-wise is different than my ability to manage doing the homework every single night. Maybe my ability to organize, right, and you'll see some pictures of this in Lindsay's presentation, is different than my ability to organize materials, is different than my ability to organize my thoughts. And so what's really important for us to leave as a message is that all of these things have nothing to do with the skills and how smart our kids are. And that's what we hope to really communicate to our children, right? This is all a journey. You know what? You're not there yet, right? There's a lot we talk about with growth mindset. We're just not there yet. But that what we can do is help you with skills that take really good notes with Lindsay with skills, because maybe doing it this way, having the context of the word in the sentence, will help you reach your goals earlier. That's how we as parents can help with process versus content. Let me tell you what it means. Let me tell you what it means. No. I still want you to determine what it means. I can help, but I want to give you a process of where to start. And so what we talk a lot about is meeting your children where they are. Where are they in their development in all of these areas, right? And help externalize support for that process. And that we want to make sure that some of the very first things they do is they make a plan. So when they come home, it's just like, not just go do your homework if they're struggling. Maybe they have it down and they're making the plan in their head. But one of the very first things is, have you really read the directions for that project? Have you really sat down and looked online to see what you have to do? And Lindsay will go through this. And my point number 4 is more important than anything that I'm about to say. One thing I will note really quickly is that we do have these courses throughout the year. We are starting another 5-week session on Sunday. We do courses, growth mindset oriented with study skills for the 4th and 5th, and then more study skills heavier for 6th through 8th and 9th through 12th. And we are doing one middle school course for writing, which is all about the process of writing, feeling more confident and comfortable with writing. And that's all starting on the 20th. There's both weekend and weekday sessions for everything except for the writing. And Lindsay runs our executive function training for professionals. So if you are a professional or know one, like any of the teachers, these have been really successful. She runs a full day, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., helping teachers understand how to help students with executive function weaknesses. And those are offered. And then we have a free workshop that's happening a couple Saturdays. That's sold out. We have another one in November, and that's all online. So with that, I'm going to introduce a dear friend and someone who's very special to a study pro, and that's Lindsay Toms. Lindsay not only works here, but she also works in assistive technology in Fairfax County. She coaches my daughter, so there you go. That's, what else can you say, right? And she is really somebody who understands kids at the molecular level and really helps to get to what they need is behind behavior. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Lindsay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. For those of you who know me know it's not warranted at all, so you can just ignore it. No, you don't need to worry about taking notes. It's all good. But thank you very much. Last year, actually 364 days the date, I was doing the October Lunch and Learn. And I asked this question last year, and I was going to ask it again today, is the haze, the honeymoon of the school year, has it worn off for anybody else? I think this is like that critical time that, okay, we're not just going over the routines, those first 6 weeks of the rules of the classroom, and now the homework's real, because now the homework's going to be used on the test, right? So it's the anxiety that they were referring to can start to peak around this time, right? And we're almost hitting the report card time. That's when it peaks. And then they kind of level off again, because they're like, okay, I got another 9 weeks going, I can build this back. We're going to talk a little bit about some strategies that you can help with, and Debbie referred to, but just to go over that executive function piece, that getting the goals done, that goal setting has become very, very popular, right? However, we don't always tell you how to achieve those goals, right? It's like, okay, it's one thing to set it. That's where the executive function support needs to be. It's how to get it done, not just that you can set a goal, and then you can handle those roadblocks that they were referring to. And the thing about roadblocks is just another thing to look at is all those tasks, the goals within the goals can look like this. So sometimes when the homework might not be getting done, we might assume that their goal wasn't to get the homework done. Right? But they might have a very well-intentioned goal to get it done and get it done well and get it done right. But then there are all these other tasks within there. And then roadblocks, as mentioned, can pop up at any one of these steps. Like it can come at any one of these times. And I know, especially with my coaching students, does it feel like any of their students or their children seek out roadblocks? That they're just kind of like driving down, they're cruising, and then they're like, oh, I can't walk the dog, the leash is all the way upstairs. Like, and then the roadblock just stops that goal, right? So it's our job, we gotta help them kind of anticipate some of those roadblocks and then know what strategies can help them out. And that's just what we're going to talk about today. It's just what strategies can you add in your helpful toolbox for your student or children. So that 4-letter word of just, anyone been guilty of saying these? Because I will say I have said all of these at one time or another in my career. Because it can be really frustrating when they know what to do, but they're not doing it, right? And that comes first. As Kathy was mentioning how the brain develops, the knowing what to do part of your brain back here develops before the getting it done part of your brain up here. So that's what's frustrating. It's not just about knowing what to do. It's also about helping them do what they know. And that's where they can get frustrated with themselves too. Don't doubt that. Have they ever said that to you? I know they've said it to me, that I know what to do. I know what I have to do next time. But then when it comes to actually implementing it, all that knowledge seems lost. But this is visually cluttered for a reason. Can you read all these? Anyone have super good eyesight that they can read any of these? No, but that's the point. Executive function can look, and the challenges in the development of executive function can look different. It can look like a lot of different things. And that's what the challenge as a parent can be. To not just revert to that just get it done, please just do it. It's because it can look different, and it can look different day to day. One of the best quotes I've heard from Dr. Barkley, he was saying, you know, a student with ADHD gets an A once and we hold it against them the rest of their lives. Right? Because you could do it that one time. You got your homework in last year. What's the problem this year? Right? So it can look inconsistent, and that's a challenge. But, so it can look like this, and this is what I see as the trendy definition of executive function. So nodding heads, the messy student, the disorganized student. It's not just that, because it can also look like this. It can look like detailed, it can look planned, it can look like I have every color-coded subject, I have it all worked out. And I see some nodding heads. Do we have some over-planners in the audience? Yes? Yeah. That's the challenge that we're facing, but we wanted to break it down for you a little bit here. And these are some of the challenges that we see, the top 5. Now, this is also taking that whole big messy slide and condensing into 5. But initiation, getting started, challenge. What about planning or missing work? The missing work is the symptom. Right? The missing work is what it looks like. The zeros in the grade book or the big red in the grade book, that's a symptom. And what we have to look at is what is actually the cause of that symptom. It's not necessarily that they don't want to do it. They need the skill of planning there. What about rushing through work? And I just want to get it done. I don't care if it's right. I don't care if it's complete. I don't care if it makes it into my backpack to then get turned in the next day. It's just off my to-do list. And that can happen a lot of times because of limited time, that they feel like there's limited time. And I'll tell you, their understanding of time, they could have 5 hours, but it feels like I don't have enough time to get this all done. And so we want to rush through it. So we're going to talk about some strategies for that. And then they just don't actively study. They just look over their notes. When I ask my students, how are you going to study? I'm so glad you're planning for that test on Thursday. You're looking ahead in the future. I get so excited. Now, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to look at my notes. Well, that's not really going to absorb the material very well. And so we have to give them and teach them. That's not something that you were innately born with, knowing how to actively study. That has to be taught, and that has to be given them. And then last, that's shutting down. And so that one is last because all of these, if we don't have strategies for some of these, that can lead to the symptom of shutting down. That can lead to the avoidance that we might see in some of our students. All right, so are these similar problems that people are seeing? Okay, let's get to some solutions here. So when I said I mentioned the trendy piece of executive function. So I have like a bone to pick with Pinterest. If you search for executive function strategies, first your only results are Pinterest results. And it's all about the color coding and the calendaring and the timers. And has anyone bought more planners in their lifetime that they don't know what to do with it and stacked a mile high? Right? The planner itself is not going to solve that problem. Right? Buying all these materials isn't going to solve that, but you do need these materials, right? You have to have that, and then you have to have the habit. So it's one thing to have the materials, and it's a whole other piece to have the habit. So these are important. You have to have some of these features. This I wanted to point out because digital storage is becoming more and more popular. Right? Some schools and some grade levels are going completely paperless. We have to teach them how to digitally store their information too. So if they're color coding their binder, there's got to be folders in Google Drive that are also color coded. And it's got to be organized because I'm a tech specialist. When some students open up their computer, please don't look at my desktop today. It's not very clean, but when they open up their computer and I see their Google Drive, they spend a good amount of time trying to find what they need, that one resource, and they're all untitled. All of the documents are untitled, so trying to find it and search for that. But that's a process that we have to teach. So, getting into, besides the just general strategies, what about how to get them started, how to help with the initiation? So, the if-then strategy is one of my favorites. And it's because if you really, and this is for everyone, this is not just for students, but this is for everyone. If you put a very specific, a what, a when, and a why on your plan, you're way more likely to actually start on it. And if you were saying to someone and you were planning a meeting and you said, yeah, let's meet sometime next week, are you ever going to meet with that person? No. If I say, I'm going to meet you on Tuesday at 4 o'clock at the deli so we can go over the slides. My what, my when, and my why are in there. So then I'm more likely to initiate. So that's the same for students. If you ask them, I love the look that I get because they look at me like I'm crazy when I say, okay, you know what homework's due. When are you going to get started? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'll get started when I get started. Well, then that just told me you're never going to get started. You should be able to tell me when and where and what it looks like. You should be able to visualize and tell me all those specifics. And that's showing me that you're able to actually initiate without me standing over you and doing it. So that's one thing you can immediately start implementing is just have them be more specific and see if you can get the craziest look you can get from your kids because it's kind of fun to see it. You're asking them some abstract thing about just like, what time? What time? Like when I get home from soccer. Okay, what time is that? All right, well, I gotta eat and then I gotta shower, and that's planning. So you're actually having them verbalize their plan to you by having those specifics put in there. And then the routine one is super important. And you have to have a routine to build a habit. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about how to build habits, but these are just some strategies that I've seen work before too. When I go home and like Friday at 4 p.m. when I have no work, I become unrecognizable. I was actually unrecognizable about an hour ago when we were setting up the chairs, but if I have work to do, it's helpful to keep your work clothes on. Same can go for students. I even had a student who left their shoes on because the shoes off was a cue that school was done, work was done, I'm ready to relax. Keeping the shoe on was a cue to him that it was homework time. So that was an environmental cue that helped build the habit. Also, putting the phone away is a huge must. You know, we don't like to have a whole lot of 100% rules all the time here. There's flexibilities. That's one of them. That's one of the ones that the phone's got to go away. And what you will see at home is some mental gymnastics for why they can't. Oh, I'm part of a group chat. Or my study guide's on my phone. Or I took a picture of the board. There's a solution for this. Okay, you're going to print the picture off. Okay, you're going to check your group chat on breaks. But there's no reason for them to have the phone actually on their desk or within reach during homework time. And I'm going to recommend some tech tools that shouldn't be on the phone, because then that's just another mental gymnastics reason for why they would want to keep it there. But that cue of putting the phone away, just like when they come here, they have an actual visual spot of where they're going to put the phone. It's kind of crazy to see. They walk in and they just automatically put it in. And that's the cue that now I'm here, now I'm ready to do homework. They can do the same thing at home, just have a spot, a specific spot where they're going to put their electronics. And then making a plan. With their planners, which is a dying art, because everything's posted online. Is that right? Have you heard that mental gymnastics going on? Why would I write it twice? It's online. You need to write it twice because online doesn't have all your life events. They don't have that grandma's going to be here next weekend and you're not going to be able to work on Friday. They don't have that you have soccer practice until 9 on Thursday. You have to have that. You have to have that plan for yourself. And then when you're going home, that's an initiation strategy that I'm going to order, starting with the easiest and shifting to hard, but that you're ordering the way you're going to do your assignment so then you have a plan. Does anyone start their work with just like, okay, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna sit, and I'm just gonna start with a checklist, or I'm just gonna start with a list of everything? That's what the planner is meant to be for students. It's supposed to be their list of to-dos for that evening. So we have to give them that routine. We have to teach them how to do that routine. And so I've kind of mentioned about the environmental cues, but about building habits, and this is what we're talking about. We're talking about building healthy habits. We need three things. You really need a cue that the habit needs to be initiated. You need a routine to keep it going. And then you need the reinforcement on the other end to keep it going. So that's one way of just saying we had to have something that reminded us to do something different. A cue. Cue is just a reminder. An environmental cues, so these are different kinds of environmental cues. That I'm going to move my location. That I'm going to go to a separate location. And it might just even be that I'm getting up from the couch and I'm going to then the table. But that's an environmental cue to get started. Also, opening up your computer and checking Blackboard in Classroom, Google Classroom, or Schoology, any of those homework portals. That's a cue to get started. So having that routine built in there. Other people are also sometimes a cue. Like, have you ever been not doing maybe something and then a boss walks by and that's a cue to like, get started? You are also those cues. That when you walk by, I better look busy. And our kids are really, really good at sometimes looking busy, right? I'm just gonna start furiously typing. My favorite is the tab switching. That is a real, and they have those keystrokes down. Again, I'm a techie, but they can go faster than I ever would be able to. And they can quickly switch the screens, and they can quickly go, oh, from that to the email. That's like always the default, like, oh, I'm busy. Oh yeah, it's emailing. But those environmental cues of just having somebody in proximity can be a cue for initiation. And then the immediate preceding action, like I get a snack, and then I start my homework. And so all of that start building the routine. Emotional state is also a cue, and I have it crossed out here for a reason, because this is a big one first. I have to feel like it. I don't feel like it. Have you ever heard this before? I just need to wait until I find that motivation for the paper. I'm telling you, kids, it's not going to come until the panic sets in. That's the emotional state that triggers the initiation for a lot of our students. We don't want that. We don't want the panic to be the motivator, because you don't want to be going through life having to wait for the panic to get you going on something, right? It's just not, the older you get, that panic isn't quite there, right? There is nobody beating down my door telling me to save for retirement. You know, I just have to do that. The panic is not necessarily there. But a lot of our students have gotten conditioned to wait for that motivator to panic to initiate, to get started. And so we want to try to remove that and use some of these other environmental cues to get them started. Now, actually specifics for initiation here too. So the checklist I explained here, but here's some strategies that I love, especially with the getting homework done every night. That routine should be pretty predictable. They should be able to say it back to me. Like, what are the steps that you do? And this was kind of cool that to write it out every time, the routine, having a visual there is great for a checklist. And this is just something that it's the checklist for how they're going to get started on their homework. And then it's just a binder clip. So then they're just flipping the binder clip when they've done each step. Like, yep, I've checked the classroom, check, it's done. So it's not even having them switch utensils sometimes with like, okay, I'm going to check it off. This is just a quick flip, and then that's their checklist. But of course, anything that's laminated, you can use dry erase markers if you're going to do it again and again. But until the habit is formed, they need a visual like this. I'm not just talking about a checklist in our head or a hypothetical checklist. But yeah, they know the routine. They know the routine. They have to see it.
Habit. You mentioned habit. Is that different for everybody? Like how long it takes somebody to get into their habit?
Yes, and think about the two on the ends. So the cue. So if the habit is not being formed, look at those three things. So is it my cue that needs to change, maybe? Is it my routine that needs to change, or is my reinforcement need to change? Now, our kids are not getting a lot of like intrinsic motivation from like checking this off necessarily. We might, but remember their frontal lobe's developing, and that planning part is developing in their brain. So they might not be getting a whole lot of motivation, reinforcement from using that checklist. And they want to, it takes time to show improvement with your school skills and your strategies here. And they're used to immediate reinforcement. So it can be difficult to build that habit, but if it's not going the way you would expect or hoped, try to look at those 3 things and say, it's not you that's the problem. You're still a perfect kid just the way you are. There is nothing wrong with you. Let's look. Is it our cues that are missing? Is it our routine that's missing? Or is it that reinforcement that we need to change? Those are the things that we should be discussing about how I can help you. Not you. You as a person are fine. And yes, sometimes it takes longer to build those habits, but let's look at those 3 things. And then for the checklist, it should be small, small, small. Super small. And if the kid's still having trouble getting started, then you just make it turn on your computer. That's the first thing on the checklist. Just open up the browser. I'd like the papers to be that the first thing on the checklist is you're titling it. That's achievable. We want to make sure that the first thing on the checklist is not astronomical, not write the thesis. That's usually like one of the first things on a checklist. There's a lot of chunks within that process of writing a thesis that you can chunk it down even smaller. And then the block it out piece, I mentioned about the phone, but these are some other strategies that you can cover a part of the page, you can fold it in half, you can just make it so it's not so overwhelming to see a lot. And this is one example that it's just a manila folder and it's just cut in thirds, that the top part is the smallest, that you put the worksheet in here and you cover it up. And that's all I want you to get started on, is just that small piece of the worksheet. Is when they see the whole thing, that seems like a mountain I cannot overcome. But this first one is the small, then the second one's the biggest section, and then the last one's a little smaller too. And then this is what I want to teach them too, how to review their work in chunks. Because if you ask them to review their work, do a little self-monitoring at the end of the worksheet, yeah, that's all right. I'm done. No, it's chunks, so we want to do it, check it, do it, check it, do it, check it. And that just helps them get started and helps them manage that work in little small chunks. And then for the phones and the technology, we streamed a documentary here. And one of the best strategies I ever heard was putting the gray filter on your phone in settings. If you have an iPhone, you can put a gray filter on the phone. And it just turns out all of that dopamine fix they're getting from scrolling and seeing the different changes in colors. And so I experimented this with myself, and you can set it for a certain time. This was mind-blowing to me. So you can set it for homework time that the phone goes on grayscale. And that's an environmental cue that it's homework time. And now all of a sudden my phone is not as engaging, and that can help me actually put it away. And I tried that out myself, and it actually really did work.
Can you explain grayscale in case people don't like it?
Oh, so it takes the phone colors and it just makes it black and white. So it just made everything black and white. So seeing the images on Instagram just were not as engaging.
Can I ask a random question?
Yeah.
Thinking about it now, I'm totally forgot. That sounds amazing for like a child with autism, to allow them to view the phone, but not get fixated on what all the other kids do too. But like, that,
Can you repeat the question too for the people in live
The
stream?
point was that it can be a really useful tool for students or individuals with autism to not get as sucked
because you're
in.
not getting so much input
Right, you're not all right.
just by changing the color.
Just by changing the color. And this came out because this was a documentary about screen addiction. And so that was one of the solutions, was to say how to break that is to take that little step towards not having it as fixed, right? Yeah, it was a game changer for me too. And so I set it up because I was finding a lot of time I was wasting on my phone in the mornings. You know, I was waking up and my phone was my alarm and I was just scrolling in my bed. And I was like, I don't have to get up at 5:30. I'm wasting like 40 minutes like checking my phone and reading different things. And when I turned on the grayscale, I found myself getting out of bed way faster. Yes, so it is in this, if you have an iPhone, it's in the settings and accessibility. And also the little trick that I also look, it's actually a vision accommodation, so it's a vision. So if you just search in your settings for vision, it'll say color filters. You want to turn color filters on, and then you can choose whatever color, but what I'm referring to is turning it on the black and white and gray. And then another little tech tool here was the Alarmy, which is just an actual app that requires you to take a picture of something to turn it off. So it was designed for heavy sleepers who would ignore, and snooze. So then you would have to go downstairs and take a picture of your coffee pot in order to turn it off. So it got you out of bed. I saw that. And
It works, I swear to God.
Yeah, it is very annoying. I will say that about the alarm. It is extremely annoying to the fact that when I heard it and saw it, I was like, ooh, I'm going to torture some of my kids with this one. You have to take a picture of your Blackboard Google Classroom to shut that off. So that is your initiation to get started on your homework. We recommend a lot of the times to set a timer to remind them to get started at that certain time. We set about 4 o'clock after soccer practice. I'm going to set an alarm for 4 o'clock, and that's my trigger to put my phone away. Well, sometimes that alarm would come and go. They just snooze and they keep going. If you make it a little inconvenient, they will see it as a really, really big inconvenience. But if we make it a little inconvenient, they're more likely to build that habit. And about that inconvenience, that's what we are. Like parents, do you ever feel like you're an inconveniencer? Like, I'm just ruining my child's life. I'm just making everything harder, according to them, at least. That's almost the best thing you can do to support their executive function. It is, and I say it's kind of like Dorothy, the 3 little bears in the porch, like just right. You have to find the just right when you're supporting the executive functions. Too easy is not helping them develop their executive functions, right? And too hard, they're never going to try any of these strategies. You have to have the just right level of inconvenience to make them change a habit. If it was easy, we would all do it. And I'd be running a marathon, anything else, any other goals or habits I might have in my life. If it were easy, I would do it. So we have to make it a little inconvenient for them. And then rescue time is one that just tracks your productivity. You can say which websites. It doesn't block anything, but it tracks it. So they can actually see the time that they're losing during homework time when they're doing something. Because what they'll try to justify, no, I don't need any blockers because I can do it and I can multitask. No one can, they especially can't. But I've said this before, that I would be a lawyer in another life because I love evidence. And I love to be like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. Arguing is the worst thing you could do with your child. And that's what Debbie refers to as climbing the ladder, and then you both reach the top of the ladder. But I'm not going to argue with you. But can you argue with the facts that you spent 4 hours on YouTube and you didn't get your homework done? That's pretty hard to argue with. All right, so this is just an example of how it says how productive. And this I did use with one of my students who was on the spectrum, and seeing the productivity level, he had a goal. He had a goal that he wanted to be 85% productive over the weekends. He was 85% productive when he was here. So he also wanted to start doing that on his own because he was a senior and he was ready to graduate, and he wanted to prove to his parents that he could live on his own. So having that concrete percentage goal was great. So thinking about planning, you might not be able to see this comic up here, but what it says is this: I have so much to do. He goes, okay, we'll start by making a plan. Right? Okay, I'm going to do that. Everything in my planner is under control. And then his friend comes to check in on him and he says, well, why aren't you doing it? He goes, well, it doesn't say to start until tomorrow. So my work isn't going to start tomorrow, so I didn't get started. So some of our kids are great planners, as long as it's not now. They can come up with a lot of reasons for why not now. And I started to say, as an executive function coach, part of my job is to look for red flags. So not look for the words that are coming out of your mouth, but necessarily look for the red flags. And the red flag to me is like a huge red flag of you need to intervene, is when they start saying, why not now? If you're talking about something upcoming, if you're talking about a project or a paper, and they start justifying, they're saying, yeah, and I'm going to do my research at school tomorrow in the library. Take a small step now. There always has to be some progress towards that goal, because always in the future, Me running that marathon is always in the future, yeah, one day. And that's the same thing that can happen with homework. So we should be able to see an actionable step towards that goal in that moment, in that now. Not any bit in the future, not even an hour from now. I'm gonna do it after. That's a huge red flag to me. Because there's always something more important. We had a student here the other day who had an art project due the next day. And so he was definitely saying, no, I can't start my lab report. I can't start my lab report because the art project is due tomorrow and that's gotta be priority. Well, you don't have to do the whole lab report, but you have to do the procedures. Because you're showing me a lot of red flags that it's not gonna be done by Thursday. And if it is done by Thursday, it might be 1 or 2 in the morning that you're working on that. So you have to take a step towards it now. So some of the same things, the routines, you're gonna hear that again. But even the small step is, okay, you get an assignment, you have to print off the assignment sheet, and you have to highlight the important directions. That can be the first part of the planning process. It doesn't have to be actually doing it, but it has to be part of that planning process. And then using a graphic organizer for these long-term projects can help. This is one we use here. And the reason I like this one is the adjustment of the due date is really important. Because remember those roadblocks and then some of our students who might be actually searching for the roadblocks? Oh, okay, well something came up and I wasn't able to do my goal that day, so then everything gets thrown out of the window. The whole plan gets thrown out of the window. So we want to give them that flexibility and see that you can adjust. And something about putting a plan online and digitally can make it feel final. We want to teach them that it's a process and you have to be flexible and you can adjust some of those due dates. And so another way to do that is using a graphic organizer is great and super helpful. You can also use these strategies. This is called a Kanban Board, which is where you're actually having these tasks broken down and you're moving them from your to-dos to doing to done. And so that can help for some of our students too, or not begun, in progress, and completed. And so for students, I have this little example here, and I'm sorry for the people watching, you might not be able to see it, but having something like this up in their room, that they see a calendar upcoming, and then these are all their chunks for a paper. So these can be repetitive, right? You're always going to start with the same process for a paper, and then I'm going to start backwards. This is my done. And then I'm just moving up the Post-its on the days that I'm going to do it. Because some students can get a little bit of anxiety if you ask them to plan too far in the future. And so my point of that, it can be just no 0 days, which I'm going to talk about, but you're just moving up. You're working on this paper a little bit every day, and you're just moving the Post-it up. That's what I'm going to do that day. So it's not committing to a finalized plan. I think sometimes when I ask them to put some of these due dates in their planner, they look at me like I'm asking them to sign their contract. That this is like, you're signing your whole life away by putting it down on paper, because what if? So this gives them a little bit of flexibility within that structures that they have to have. And then I could reuse these Post-its for the next paper that's going to come up, because the process is going to be the same. So it's teaching them that planning process that can be the same each time and giving them a strategy like this. Okay? And last one, having a folder for their long-term planning project can have a designated folder. I always put the assignment sheet, I always put everything in a folder, which is kind of nice. Like, these are actually called project planning folders. And so they're just divided in 5s. And so there's a pocket for each one. So you can have these and you can have it labeled that this is your assignment direction sheet, that always goes in there. This is where your outline goes, that always goes there. This is where your first draft goes, that always goes there. And I know things are done digitally, and I don't want to kill too many trees, but it's important to have them see it concretely. And so having a strategy like this that you always have, okay, so your initiation strategy is now go get your project folder and let's start with that. That can help us remind us about what those steps are. And then also for the paper, what I was referring to about on digital, that it can feel final. It can feel even more like that contract. Paper is preferred for planning. And with pencil, not with pen. Some of our students really, really like to write in pen. We have to be flexible. And part of that flexibility is the adjustments that we are erasing and moving. But if paper, if there's a dysgraphia, there's some handwriting concerns, it's okay to be flexible, that there are some digital options out there. The My Homework app and Tick are great, because what you want to look for in, if you're using a digital way to plan, is you have to, any kind of planning, you have to have a month view and you have to have a week view. And a lot of the times when we're storing things digitally, you just have a list. A list doesn't help them actually get it done. So they have to see a month view and they have to see the week view. So these are just some other examples. And then sometimes a barrier or roadblock for not using a planner or not having that habit there is, I just forget, right? And we can't, and we don't want to always be there to remind them, I'm not there in school, or I'm not always there at home when you're doing your homework. So this is a really cool extension called Site Reminder, and it's on Google. But what you can do is you can trigger this pop-up to, it can be any website. So I actually have it set up for Twitter, that when I go to Twitter, it says, hey, remember, this is the actual company account versus this is your personal account. So it's just like, oh, it's a reminder there. So, but something like that this is on Blackboard. So this is for a student that was always forgetting to actually write it down in their planner. They don't have to do it in school, especially if they're the only one using the paper planner. They don't have to do it in school, but part of that initiation strategy at home is that I'm shaking out my planner, I'm checking Google Classroom or Blackboard, and I'm writing down my assignments there. And so that's just a way to actually remind them without you being there.
So I have a question about that, because these are strategies that I've tried with my son, and what I find is I get so much resistance because doing the planning feels like extra work,
Right.
and he doesn't understand why should I have to do this extra thing when it's already available to me.
I know.
And I understand why, but I can't get past the resistance of I think you can do extra stuff that's not required.
It's very challenging. I was told by one of my students that I was psychologically traumatizing him. And I don't want to take that lightly from, being an educator is important, that I want your kids out, and I don't want to diminish any pain that they might be feeling in that moment, but that was how it felt to him. It really did feel like horrible trauma. And that's that kind of, what I said, I'm an inconveniencer. My job, I gotta be a little inconveniencer, and it's part of my job to also give you the permission to slow down, that I know it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to keep doing it. And it's kind of like that brushing the teeth piece too, when they might have fought you a really long time ago, and this is an even bigger fight than getting them to brush their teeth, but there's certain things that they don't see the benefits of it now, but we can see a little bit further in the future. And seeing it further in the future, what the analogy that I like to use is that we can see the train on the tracks as if they were standing on the tracks. They're just standing on the tracks and they're not seeing this danger coming full speed for them. And you're saying, you got a plan. And he's like, no, I'm good. I can stay on these tracks. And I don't care if they're going to come off those tracks a little bruised. I'm going to keep them safe. And I'm going to do what I got to do to protect them from seeing danger. You can see a little bit further in that future than he can right now. And the scanning app one, has anyone heard or used Scannable? Right. You're all going to get it today. Scannable is a really, really big fan favorite here. And it's just a way to use your phone and take a picture of a document or the board or anything that you might want to store digitally, and converts it into a really clear and crisp black and white PDF. So then they can immediately submit it on Google Drive. They can immediately email, right? You got to use that one, and we use it all the time. And taking a picture of the board, I even see some people doing it today. Like when you see something you like, where you can take a picture. Use the Scannable app. It just makes it much clearer to read later on. Right? It's not an actual picture. It's a PDF. It's black and white. It makes it look really crisp. And then the last one, having a homework buddy, that's that environmental cue of having another person. And I've seen schools start to implement too that they, at the beginning of the year, pick a homework buddy. So if they don't know what an assignment means, they have somebody that they can reach out to in class. So that's also a useful strategy. And then, of course, have to put a little plug in for our planner here that we have, that process of seeing it upcoming, and then also seeing the week view, but also I was chatting with a parent who's using it now, and also seeing your available time is what our planner can offer to. But whenever you're considering any kind of these planning strategies, they have to have something to see that train coming their way. And then I kind of alluded to this, but the note 0 days has just become my personal motto in life, that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So yes, I did not run the 12 miles that I was supposed to run today to run a marathon, but I'm not going to have a 0 day for it. And so the same can be applied for the students, that it doesn't have to be complete project done or complete long-term assignment done, but we're just not going to ignore it at all. So the smallest of days, it can be the titling of the document, it can be adding the headings, but you are opening it up, we are seeing it, you're putting hands and eyes upon it. So that could be a motto. It doesn't have to be 100%, but it has to be no 0 days. So that thinking about rushing, once we get the plan done, they might, sign the contract, okay, this is the plan, I'm ready to do it. And then they actually go to start it, and then that's when the rushing can happen. And so this was part of the reason that this example here, this do nothing for 2 minutes, is a great initiation strategy for before they do homework. Or if you're catching them rushing, but this is just a website that it has ways and it has a little bit of mindfulness here, but they're asking them to work on their inhibition, because if you touch the mouse, the timer starts over. And so if I thought about it. I thought about torturing everyone and just having us stare at this for 2 minutes. I'm not going to do that. But this can be a long time for some of our kids. But I want them to be aware of, you can do it. You can slow down and give yourself permission. Because a lot of that rushing happens immediately from the start. I gotta do this, and I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, and that leads to multitasking, that leads to mistakes. So give them permission when they start to slow down. So this is just one way to do it. And then chunking it, making it small. And then we discussed a little bit before is also just checking the works when they're on breaks versus the end of the night. But if you are helping out at homework and you're not doing it with them or not doing it for them, but you're helping them with that self-monitoring, remember that isn't developed yet. So they're going to see everything as 100% and they're going to see everything as perfect. And that's not even necessarily because they just want to be done. That's really because that part of their brain cannot see the same errors that you were seeing. So, but checking out on breaks is really, really important versus the end of the night. If you're checking at the end of the night, that's when the fights are going to happen. I can pretty much guarantee that. But if you're checking on it and tell them you're going to be checking it, but not just when they come back from the break and you're like, oh wait, you got to go redo this and this and this and this. And then if you can just leave a little Post-it note on their desk, check numbers 6 and 12 and a smiley face. And if you even say like 1, 2, 3, 4, all right, if you start giving those positives, and then you can walk away, so then it's not the verbal argument, that you're just giving a little bit of feedback, but it's not leading to, oh, you think I do everything wrong. Or, oh, you don't trust me. And those kind of arguments can happen. So these are just the little ways that you can help and support, but not do it for them, and hopefully not lead to any argument. So this is about chunking and about not rushing. Timers are essential. We use the time timer that shows the pie of the time ticking away. They have to see it concretely. This is an Amazon clock that you can set 2 timers. So it actually shows the visualization of the time going down too. And what's nice and what we use in the homework center too is sometimes 2 timers. One, every 30 minutes you're going to be taking a break, you're going to get up and you're going to physically move. But to get them to slow down, I'm also going to have a timer set for 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, we're just going to work on these 5 problems. And I'm only going to give you 1 page at a time, and if you're not even the one sitting there doing it, you can have them get up across the room. And I'm going to keep the rest of the work over on the kitchen island. You're at the dining room table, and you're slowing them down. Remember, inconveniencing them a little bit. Then they finish with that page of the work packet, and I'm putting that off to the side. It's done. Now I'm getting up and getting the second page of the packet and doing that. And so little pieces of those slowing them down can help with that rushing and helping them be aware of that time that's passing. And then when they're actually taking a test, have you seen this? Some careless mistakes that might be coming back on tests. Yeah, they're rushing. They might be rushing. Having them use a different color pencil or pen can help them with their homework as well, too. That I mark up on a worksheet that these 5 are going to be with your blue, these 5 are going to be with your green, these 5 are going to be with your red, and then they're switching out and slowing down a little bit and realizing that they're moved on to the next jump. On a test, I just had a student who was taking a math test and he needs to do his work on a separate sheet of paper. But it was hard for the teacher to track where all the work was. So the process that we practiced in the homework center was that he was doing the problem and showing his work, and then he was boxing it with the highlighter. Then moving on to the next problem, boxing that with the highlighter. And so that process that slowed him down and also gave some visual distinguishing between each work, so the numbers weren't getting messed up. So it gave visual organization and it helped them slow down a little bit. And then just test-taking strategies. Teaching them test-taking strategies can help them with slowing down. And so I guess I love cut-up folders here, because I have this other one here that's just laid flat and cut up in different sections. So that one was cut up in thirds, this one's cut up in 6, and these just have like test-taking strategies on them. And so a little bit foldable here that I would want to see is that they would know what each of these are and give a little summary on the inside cup. Oh, it's upside down. Thank you. See, I need an assistant one. I keep joking that I felt like a magician with all my props here. So I need someone else. So that having that little visual of some of these test-taking strategies of like slash the trash at first, and what I've told my students too, the process piece of, I don't care if you get a 0 on a test. What I want to see is the effort, and how I can see the effort is I want to see you crossing off answers that you didn't know. I'm going to see you circling some important information in the directions, using some of these test-taking strategies. I don't care about the results. The results will come if you focus on this part of the process. And so you got to teach them, and then you got to remind them to use it. And then covering up, when they're taking a test, if they're allowed to have like a blank note card, you're going to blank 5x8 note card with nothing written on it, but it's just covering up different sections of the test to slow them down. And then they have to take breaks. We said this 30 minutes. And the key with taking breaks, we have some anti-breakers here that don't want to take a break because they're afraid they're going to lose momentum. Or they're afraid they don't trust their working memory to pick up back where they were. They would lose time by then sitting back down and knowing where to start. So the key strategy there is that they just jot down on a little Post-it note or a whiteboard, not where they left off. It's a subtle difference, but it's a really, really big one for our kids. That don't say, yep, I stopped at problem 14. You're going to start with problem 15. And I know that seems subtle, but it's really important. Start with that initiation of what are you going to start with when you get back. And then using these tech tools it is important to acknowledge that sometimes homework is hard, and even the content can be challenging on some occasions. So you can use some of these tools. Text compactor gives a little auto summary, and Rewordify helps actually make it at a reading level that's accessible to them. But Reader View just helps. Look at this clutter that on this website from a reading assignment. There's a lot of ads, and there's a lot of these pieces here. And then if you use the Reader View in Mozilla, so it's a different browser than Chrome, Mozilla and Reader View, you can clean it up and then it puts it into this. So that really helps them where it can slow down and not click and not scroll and scroll and scroll. So Reader View and Mozilla. And then the last thing, having a clear goal of when they're done. But that's part of the planning process. They're not done when they feel like they're done. That's very specific. And it's done when I've checked over it. And so Debbie was referring to the cards that she made. These were such a great idea, and it was really fun to try to figure out how to flip and move and get them printed on both sides. But this was just a twist on how to make flashcards that made it a little more concrete, that you had to picture it, like actually draw out a visual cue to yourself to how you're going to remember it. And your one word, my clue, and then checking off, is this a person, place, and thing? Is this an action word? So having them slow down the process. Our kids love Quizlet. Quizlet is, remember that inconvenience thing? Quizlet's the easy way, right? Because sometimes they're even made for you. And so, we want to slow them down and make it fun or make it engaging, but giving them the permission to take it slow and work on the process. So this was the example of her actual completed one. So you can see that actually completed the drawing and the clues and checking it off on the back. There was this scale of, is this a word that I know, or am I still working on it? Or, I got this, or I don't have it yet. And so she can move that scale down. Mhm. So that's a good question. The first question was about online tests and do you have any strategies for slowing them down that way? My first answer would be to see if you can get the paper and pencil, they can print it off. My second thing, what I like to do is zoom in really big so that they can only see one question at a time. All of our students, if they're using like a Google form, some of those assessments, if they have the ability to zoom in the screen, I just teach them to do that. So then they're just seeing one column at a time. They're not seeing the upcoming ones. And so then they can move down in order, just one at a time. So the question was that if the first one trips them up. So teaching them that testing strategy of preview the whole test, just give it a preview, start with the ones that you know. The same thing as like the easy hard, just start with the ones you know, you can always come back. And then the default just guess one at the end if you're really not sure. I mean, there's a lot of test taking strategies too, but like just not, don't change anything unless you're 100% sure. Just go with the gut, plug it in, some of those, but yeah, don't get stuck on one and moving on. And so thinking about the active study, I already mentioned my bone with Quizlet. It can be really great, it can be really engaging. If you're using it, they have to be creating their own deck of index cards, not ones that were created for them or in that list, because there's a searchable bank in Quizlet that might have been made by somebody not in your class, by your teacher. They are completely different words or completely different definitions, but they just saw, oh, the topic was photosynthesis, so I'm going to study these photosynthesis words. You have to be making them. That's part of the process. And then you have to be doing different things with them. You have to, the learn is the one that's the most engaging, but also gives a lot of good practice. But then you can also print out Quizlet decks and have them use it in different ways on paper. And the first thing would be like highlighting a keyword, a trigger word that can help them remember. And then think about also, can you draw it? Can you explain it? Can you use it in context? Making fun, they've used some other actual active study strategies, but this one is just another way to make flashcards. It's just a paper folded in half and then cut. And so it's just changing it up. It's just changing it up that actually is requiring them to make, create, do. That's the big thing with studying. If they're just, I'm going to review, I'm going to go over. That's not making, creating, or doing something. So this is just another way that they can be making something. And then in their planner, if you think about when they put down studying, they should be able to describe how they're going to study. Not what they're going to study, not just what they're going to study, but what and how they're going to study. And then sorting into the knows and the don't knows, like having a folder, actually putting in piles. My greens are my knows, my reds are my don't knows. And just actually sorting that, or these flashcards that can be green and red. So I'm going to brain dump all the stuff I know. That's a great initiation strategy for studying. I'm going to brain dump everything I know on my greens. And then I'm going to list the topics that I don't know on my reds. And the goal is to be moving them over to the green. Of course, movement is really important when you're studying. It can actually help with anxiety. Actually, do you see how I'm dancing around? And moving? I got restrictions today. I got restrictions because of the camera that I couldn't go too far one way or the other. But movement helps, right? Standing still or sitting still can breathe and have that anxiety just sit with them. Actually get up and move. Making a study guide, a lot of the times, especially as they get older, study guides aren't as provided. So they can actually make one. The use of Jeopardy game is an online, there's plenty of templates. Jeopardy requires them to come up with the answer, right? So these can help with some of those terms. And then this one it's called Jamboard, but it's part of the Google family. And this is just a way where, as the unit's going on, they can start throwing stuff onto this big whiteboard. It can be anything. You can add anything to this digital whiteboard and then actually take notes on that. That can be an active study strategy that they use. So then they have this one document where they can go, and that's their study guide. They have all the materials in one place. And then, of course, having study groups and partners can help. That's another one of those environmental cues. And then, final note on the test here. I'm going through these fast, but no one, this is what Kathy and Debbie have said many, many times. If you've seen these presentations before, no one ever does better because the stakes were higher. No one ever performed better. So that can happen a lot with tests. And sometimes they put the stakes on themselves. This came from one of our coaches here, that in the planner, the students were writing tests and then writing like exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, all in red. She just calmly explained that it's not an emergency. This is not 911. This is just something awareness that you can prepare for. And the analogy I like to use a lot is that we say one thing and then they get a whole lot of environmental cues that's completely opposite. So we're saying, you're gonna be fine, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. And then they get to the test and the teacher's like, okay, but put everything away, and I'm gonna draw the sheets closed, I'm gonna close the door, and I'm gonna give you all these environmental cues that it's not okay, it's not just a regular day. And before the state testings, there was one school that was giving out peanut butter and jelly sandwiches because the students needed to have a healthy meal before the test, and that's true. But that's the first time they were ever getting peanut butter and jelly sandwiches from that class. So that is going to cue me that this is something different. And this is something that may feel like an emergency 911. Right? And so that's the piece is we want to say, we have to recognize that we are giving them cues that it is an emergency. And that can also be when they, how was that test today? How'd you do? That first question, and it makes them think that we're focused on the results and feel like we're focused on the results. Right, so we want to move them to say, okay, what was easy on that test? What process part was easy? Right, did you hit any roadblocks on the test? If you ask some of those more specific questions that can help not give the cue that it's an emergency or that you're raising the stakes. And as Debbie mentioned, these text corrections versus error analysis, there's a big difference. And text corrections are part of the learning process, but they're the least favorite part of the learning process for our students, because if I knew why I got it wrong, I wouldn't have gotten it wrong in the first place. So it can be really frustrating, and it's not worth the 0.5 points that I'm going to get back from doing it. But what the teacher's goal here is, okay, you didn't know it, now what resources, what strategies can you do to solve and figure it out? Is it in your notes? Can you look it up? Can you ask for help? Can you come see me? They want them to problem solve, and that can be really frustrating after the fact for a lot of our students. But the difference between test corrections and error analysis is these are more about the actual content. Test corrections are more like, I don't understand the content. Whereas error analysis can, when you're reflecting on where a test, how a test results did come in, you can say, okay, what would I change? Would I change something in how I studied? Or would I change something in how I took the test? So these are some reasons for why they might not have gotten the goal that they wanted to out of the test because of studying areas. They didn't have the notes, they didn't have the materials, they didn't actively study, I didn't make a plan. When they were actually taking a test, these are some of the areas that we can refer to. That work was too messy, or I rushed through it, I didn't show my work, I didn't label work. I just had a student who missed 8 points on a math test because he didn't write proof for each problem. Guess what we practiced in the homework center the other day? Writing proof with each problem. But some of those was important to know. There's nothing wrong with you. That score means nothing. That score does not have a reflection on how capable you are in geometry. We're going to attack it together and find out with error analysis where we can use some different strategies. And they're way more likely to receive that information and be like, oh, okay, well, what are we going to do better next time? All right, what can we do? Okay, that's the results that we got. We need to change that. And so that piece of that, what we want to do is make sure that we are understanding what's happening. really what's going on with our kids and reframe the paths and finish line. That we're not changing the workload for them. We're not lightening the workload for them. We're actually just narrowing their focus on what they should be working on, some of those goals. And then managing our behavior first is a really, really big one. And so with the managing our behavior first, a lot of that can come in when they're shutting down. So we talked about how all these strategies, we can have them all in place, and then sometimes our students might just shut down and aren't showing the perseverance that they might need to make it through and pick up and have that growth mindset piece. So we have to give them the skills. We have to teach them some of these active study skills and actually teach them the planning skills. Then we actually have to provide the bumper lanes that put it into action. Remember that doing part. Not just about knowing what to do, but actually doing what you know. And then changing the script on how we react is really important. So for shutting down, planned active breaks, it's not just when you're hitting that burnt out. That's why it's important to have the breaks every 30 minutes. It's not just when I see the meltdown coming, then I go tell you to take a break. What I would say is, like, if you wait until you're starving, you're going to eat everything. Right? So these are some mindfulness grounding techniques. List 5 things you can see in the room, 4 things you can hear, taste, so on and so forth. Just putting your feet on the ground, reminding them to do these. But these all need to be done preventatively. This is what I gotta tell you. This has to be done preventatively. Because if you've ever felt upset in your life and someone came up to you and said, hey, why don't you try breathing? How would that work out? Not so well. I know I wouldn't appreciate it. And our students, our kids don't appreciate that too. We have to work on some of these strategies preventatively. And then also having them actually keep a log of strategies for themselves of what can I do when I am feeling like this. And so they can keep it in physically or they can keep it digitally. I like some of these ideas of just having them digitally stored too. So when I'm feeling stuck, when I'm feeling like I can't, I can refer to those strategies. And then the choice between 2 is just saying that when you're feeling like shutting down, it's feeling like my frontal lobe is going offline. So as Kathy was saying about the brain development, and you might have seen this before, if you think of it like that your arm is the spinal cord here, and this is the part of your brain that knows what to do, and this is your executive functions up here. When we're stressed, when we're burnt out, all of a sudden those all go offline. All of those executive functions go offline. It's like a closed fist. And so just imagine going from here to here. Their executive functions are developed, so they're kind of like this. They're even closer to that shutdown spot. So we have to recognize that in ourselves and not, they will get there. But right now they're hair trigger close to that shutdown mode. So giving them a choice between 2 is bringing that a little bit back online. That you can't see things clearly right now, you can't make a choice, so I'm going to give you a choice. So you can do this or that. I can sit next to you, or I can sit at the kitchen island, but I'm going to be in this room. But I'm going to give you a choice. Would you want to work on a whiteboard or a piece of paper? So you can give them these, and then having them when they're feeling stuck and shut down, just having them brain dump all the information out there. And then giving them a visual, something like this, of just, what are you feeling right now? What are some possible solutions? Just having this available can be really helpful. If it's digital or printed out or something to that effect. But just having them to focus on something else besides, I can't get started, I can't get started, I can't get started, I can't do. And a lot of times when that blank paper in front of them can be really overwhelming. So if you have them use like Google Voice or make a recording and just write down anything that's coming to mind, they're more likely to be able to continue to work with that, edit something. But blank is scary. Just get the information out. Oh, I think I got really close to the time there, but to wrap up just some of these key takeaways, giving yourself permission, this is hard for you and it's hard for them. And knowing that there is a need behind some of the behaviors that you're seeing. And to address that, there's nothing wrong with them. We're tackling the need behind that. Meet them where they are, just not where we would hope they would be at this stage in their life or this grade level, I hope. Or you should be able to meet them where they are. And then finally, which you've heard many times if you're part of the study group family, which many of you are, That your relationship is way more important than any grade or any piece of homework. And so that should always be the priority. All of that can take away. We can feel that our relationship might be chipped away there. And so just remember that there's nothing more important than your bond and your relationship with your child or your student. All right, so thank you. If anyone does have any questions,
And we are
we will
gonna-
hang out, of course, if
We're
anyone.
gonna end the live stream. Do you want to mention it? We're gonna end.
Oh, we're gonna end the live stream.